Welcome to the Hypervoice. I am your host, Stephen Morioka, and today I am joined by Alex Underhill.
Hello, everybody.
No adjective this time, but we'll move on. Our guest for today is Jon Hu.
Hi, guys.
We brought in Jon for a very special reason, and this is because today we are going to talk almost exclusively about luck for this episode. You know, it's a pretty big topic in Pokemon, so I don't really have a very good segue into any of these other topics. So why don't we just get started? So the first thing I want to ask you guys is to define Hax. So what would be your definition of Hax? That is, Hax is a completely made up word for Pokemon players that we use. So go ahead, guys.
Okay, so I guess the first thing I want to point out is that there are a lot of interpretations of the term Hax. And since it is made up, there's like a lot of people have different like definitions, but to me, it's probably when you look at an event and if the event has either a 100% chance of occurring or a 0% chance of occurring, that is not Hax, and everything else is Hax.
Yeah, I would say my definition of Hax is whenever there is some kind of factor that, like Jon said, it has a certain percentage to happen, not a guarantee or I guess the opposite, a guarantee that it doesn't happen. If it has a percentage chance to happen and it influences the game, I would say it's Hax.
Hey, that's very good. That sounds similar, and it's similar to what I have. I actually wrote this down because I thought about it for a bit, and I wrote down Hax. I define Hax as any event related to chance that causes a player to lose the game, where otherwise said player will win.
Well, the problem I have with that definition is that you're kind of ignoring the fact that people can have Hax go for them or against them. So really, Hax works for both players, but in a different direction.
It also doesn't always determine the game. Like, you could have a lot of poor luck throughout the entire match, but still play well enough to bring it back and win. So, I guess, yeah, like Jon said, there's two sides to it. It can either be helpful or hurtful. So, sometimes Hax will win you the game, and sometimes Hax will lose you the game.
Right. I've always considered, though, Hax as under a negative connotation. So if let's say, for example, I get hit by a critical hit, you know, I consider that, that was Hax against me. Whereas if I hit my opponent with a critical hit, you know, I don't consider that as Hax on my end. That's just, you know, hey, I got good luck. And I don't know, Hax always seems like it has this negative vibe to it.
Yeah, that is true. When you look at it from your perspective, if you get something that maybe your opponent sees it as Hax, but maybe you just think of it as, wow, I got pretty lucky there. And I guess that also varies too, because sometimes when you get a critical hit on the opponent, you actually don't want that, because then it gives them the initiative to maybe switch in a new Pokemon.
That's very true. Yeah, I think, you know, ultimately, I think the common thread that all of us mentioned is that it's some event related to chance, where there either wasn't a guaranteed event happening otherwise. So that's pretty cool. We'll amend this as we go on. You know, maybe we'll change some minor opinions, and I'm sure some of the people out there, you know, they may not be agreeing with us, so let us know about that in an email or something, which we'll get to later on how you guys can contact us. But everyone gets the drill by this point. So, Hax happens in Pokemon. Why don't we just go with, you know, it's an important factor in Pokemon. It's not the most dominating one by far. So, when you guys go into preparing for tournaments and playing in tournaments, what do you guys do to mitigate some of the luck factors in Pokemon?
Well, I would say that a good start would be to look at all your Pokemon's attacking moves, or I guess status moves, whatever, just all the moves in general. And you want to look at their accuracy. That's typically going to be the biggest factor. And you want to see, like, when you're practicing, how often do you lose games just because maybe you missed one move, or, you know, how often are you counting on that one move to be the game-winning move, like it hits or misses, and that decides the whole game. You want to have as few not 100% accurate moves as possible, so as many as possible to be 100% accurate. That way, you know exactly what's going to happen every turn, at least from your end, and you can prepare for it the best you possibly can. And if your opponent is using moves that have a chance to miss, it's only going to benefit you. Whereas if you're using very few moves that can miss, you have the best chance to predict what's going to happen coming that turn.
Yeah, so I guess I agree with Alex here. Move choice is very like the basic level of stopping some of these luck factors. I know a lot of players opt to go for the more accurate option, even if it's not stronger than the more powerful, less accurate options like Fire Blast versus Flamethrower. Flamethrower is just consistent damage all the time, and usually it's a coverage move anyway, so you don't really need it to be super overpowering. But Fire Blast does get you more KOs. So it really comes down to that, and it's kind of a bigger issue in best of 1, I would say, versus best of 3. Best of 3 allows you to kind of notice whether you miss more or less, and you can kind of take a little bit of a risk. So some people do opt to go for the less accurate option when they know that the tournament is going to be best of 3.
Right. Gotta agree with both of you there. You know, start off basic with, during team building, check your moves, know their accuracies. Are you taking risks that you don't necessarily have to take with your damage output? And this also is kind of related to some of the issues of the 2016 format where, you know, people said there's way too many, outside factors coming into this season. And, you know, one of those things was the choice in attack for your primals, where, you know, you always have that option of Water Spout versus Origin Pulse and Precipice Blades versus really nothing else on the physical side for Groudon, such as Earthquake. And Origin Pulse and Precipice Blades had those accuracy issues, and, you know, those came into play at some points during the season, I'm sure for a lot of people. And I guess with Groudon, you know, Earthquake wasn't really a viable option just because you had to deal with your own partner Pokemon. You need to have Levitate or Protect It or be a flying type. Whereas Precipice Blades, you know, you can just spam that without worry at all and just hope they hit the opponent. So I feel like that was, again, one of those issues for this season specifically, but just generally speaking, the luck factors is just something. Have you guys thought about this, like the stages of death for luck? You know, you go to like denial at first, like, oh, I can't believe this just happened to me. And then I think acceptance is somewhere down the line there too.
Yeah, definitely.
Desperation's in there, I believe.
Desperation, yeah.
Oh yeah.
Just like, yeah, once you've played enough Pokemon, you kind of hit that acceptance stage where you kind of accept whether you hit or you miss or you lose off of the unlucky roll. But yeah, going back to what Steven said about this season specifically, being kind of luck is everywhere, especially when you consider the weather. The only two weathers other than Delta Stream or no weather would be the Super Sun and the Super Rain, I guess. And that's interesting because Kyogre do like to run Thunder, and depending on which weather is up, it actually affects the accuracy of Thunder. And it affects it in both ways. You can either make it skip the accuracy check in Rain, which is actually a really good way to mitigate luck factors. Like, if you're playing a Smeargle and the Smeargle gets a Moody accuracy or evasion boost, you can smack it with Thunder and doesn't even have to check the accuracy. Whereas if you're in Sun, it just hits it down to 50, which is even worse than the base 70. So it's really kind of a double-edged sword when you try to put Thunder on your Kyogre. But it is a move that people tend to run to face other Kyogre.
Yeah, that's what I was going to mention. I think John's already stolen two of my favorite examples, the Flamethrower Fire Blast comparison, and then just talking about Water Spout versus Origin Pulse on Kyogre. That was a big part for me this whole season because I was largely a Kyogre player for the majority of the 2016 format. And I always wanted to... Like, I ran Origin Pulse at what was it, St. Louis Regionals, Collinsville? And it was a best of one tournament, and I had made it into the top cut. And then in my top 8 match, in my second game, I hadn't actually not missed an Origin Pulse through the whole tournament, and I had used it several times. And so I was just so scared of missing Origin Pulse that I actually went for Thunder on a Geomancy Xerneas, and it failed to KO it, and ended up losing that game and then the set. And so since then, I've been trying to just kind of avoid running into that situation again where I'm scared of a miss or like I need to hit an 85% accurate move, which is, you know, the majority of the time, but you're bound to miss it when you use it so often.
Right.
And so that's why when I said like picking your moves beforehand is a huge part of mitigating luck, that's what I do, is I look for alternatives to using inaccurate moves and kind of roll from there.
Yeah, that kind of ties into another thing that you just reminded me of. If you're afraid of missing, and this is another great move that actually came up in VGC16 but existed since Generation 4, is that gravity reduces the evasion of every Pokemon on the field by 2. So, and it also makes things weak to ground, I guess, or not resistant, I guess. And so that is actually another good way of mitigating your accuracy luck. And it's especially terrifying when there's a Groudon, and then they definitely can't miss their Precipice Blades. And that's very scary. And the same goes for Kyogre. Origin Pulse won't miss, and then other inaccurate moves also. So gravity is another great way of kind of helping your side, but it also helps your opponent. So you got to be careful when you're using gravity.
Yeah, gravity was a huge factor this season, especially with, Groudon's Precipice Blades not having to worry about, again, your partner, where, just spam it on the other side, you'll be able to hit everything, everyone loses its immunity, whatever. But yeah, I agree, gravity's an option. I wonder how much we'll see it for 2017, because we don't know all the gravity users and the kind of ground moves we're going to have.
True, and the terrains are getting emphasized a real whole lot, so we could see more gravity play so that every Pokemon benefits from the terrain effects.
Yeah, I could see gravity, not just benefiting the strength of ground moves, but also just being used for moves like Hypnosis or low accuracy moves like Dynamic Punch or the fire equivalent, I believe, Inferno or something like that. And so, yeah, you could see gravity being used for, and then like annoying things like Grasp Whistle, Whimsicott. I don't know if Whimsicott is in the Pokedex or not, but there are a lot of ways to take advantage of gravity that are not just using ground moves. That's typically using low accuracy status moves, but gravity could definitely still have an impact in the future.
So yeah, that's another way to look at it during your team building. Think about gravity if you want to increase some of your moves' accuracies. But this comes up in a lot of situations for people, and I want to say for some newer players, they might not necessarily understand this concept. But when a player says to play to your odds, we kind of want to explain what that means to do in your game. So I'm going to present a situation here where I want you guys to tell me what to do in this turn and why. And, this is going to have to do with some luck factors in Pokemon. So the situation is I have a Landorus with 1 HP. So I had a Focus Sash. Now it's gone. And I'm up against a Milotic here. And I'm faster. I know this. I'm 100% faster. I know I'm faster than the Milotic. I have Earthquake and Rock Slide, and let's just say for this situation that the Earthquake, if it gets a critical hit, is a one-hit knockout. If it does not, then Milotic survives. Rock Slide plus Earthquake is a guaranteed knockout. So, considering this situation, what should I do as the Landorus player? Should I go for the Earthquake for the critical hit, or go for the Rock Slide flinch?
Well, I guess in that situation, if you really want to maximize your chances of winning, despite Rock Slide having a chance to miss, the odds are still greater that you pull a flinch out of using it, and then you can subsequently get off an Earthquake, a second attack, to finish off the Milotic. So if you really want to maximize your chances, you're going to go for Rock Slide first. Just hope that you get a flinch, and then from there, finish off the game. Whereas if you tried to go for the critical hit, you would only have such a slim chance, a 6% chance, unless your Landorus had a Landsat Berry flung at it. But I don't think that's a very common strategy, so I think the best chance is going to be using Rock Slide first.
Yeah, definitely what Alex said was pretty much all correct. From a mathematical viewpoint, you definitely want to Rock Slide first, since it's just, you have a better chance of winning that way. If you go for the Earthquake, sure, you'd be not as likely to get it. It's still possible, but I know there are a couple of new players. Every time I place it with a couple of new players, they tend to go for the more damaging option, and that sometimes isn't enough, because you may not get the crit or the damage roll you need, and so playing for the flinch or the confusion, whatever you need to do to win, is probably better for the winning.
Yes, an excellent test for you guys. You guys passed. Just looking at the raw numbers here, factoring in Rock Slide's accuracy and flinch chance, you have a 27% chance to win in that situation, versus the earthquake critical hit, which is just 1/16, so 6.25%. So nearly little over 4 times greater there. So, great explanation from you guys. Thank you very much. Let's just go ahead and move on from this. That's kind of what it means to play to your odds. Give yourself the best possible chance to win a game, win the match, whatever it is. And, you just do some simple probability calculations. Work on these through practice. Work on these as you play through games through the season. And you'll get better at it when you come into live situations in tournaments like that.
Yeah, it's definitely something that comes from experience when you just, when you realize what's the play to give you the best chance of winning. And it's important that you eventually come to realize these. And if you don't always know what's going to give you the best chance, you have a turn timer, especially in this format. We're not sure. Well, no, we do know it's going to be 60 seconds for the future. So even more time. So you have a lot of time to kind of sit there and look at all your options and kind of think through what is going to give me the best chance to win. If one move can miss but is going to guarantee the KO, or if you want to go for a critical hit chance, what is the highest way or highest chance you can give yourself to win? Just take the time, think it through, and then you can make the best move.
See, and I feel like when other people would watch this type of situation, say on a stream or something, you would see this player go for the rock slide, and people are thinking, oh, Hax, this guy just hacks the other player out, going for the flinch there. But a wiser player understands that, no, this was the right move for that player to make. He was giving himself the best chances to win. So, I guess, what do we think about some of those people on viewers on the streams?
Well, one thing I wanted to mention that we see a lot in 2016 are, since the number of Pokemon that we see is relatively fewer, we run into a lot of speed ties, which, in terms of luck, is just a 50-50 like coin flip. It's a 50% chance that you go first, or it's a 50% chance that your opponent's Pokemon goes first if they are at the same speed. And sometimes you'll have like a last turn where the match comes down to who wins the speed tie. And what I normally do for myself is, if I'm in that situation, I don't really care if I win or lose. Like, what I look at it, the way I look at the match is that I did not play well enough to secure a win. And even if I did win that speed tie and win the match, it still wouldn't really feel like a win to me because it was just down to a coin flip. And I know that if I went back a couple of turns and maybe played the game better, I would have had a guaranteed win instead of having to worry about a 50-50 speed tie. And so that's another thing I wanted to mention with mitigating luck factors is, if you are really a smart player and you think ahead a lot, you could see maybe you have two alternatives to finish a game, like we're looking at the Pokemon Groudon, where you could either Precipice Blades at the end of the game to KO this Pokemon, or if you played the game differently, it comes down to just hitting your Fire Punch, which is 100% accurate. And so, if you can play the game and, have enough foresight to see where the game is going to be going, then, do your best to mitigate using those moves that are not 100% accurate.
Another thing I think you should consider is that when you're watching a match and you're not actually playing in it, and you see some sort of luck event happening, like, some Moody Boost, or they're going for the rock slide flinches, or another speed tie situation like Alex mentioned, is that you're not actually playing the game. So you kind of feel like you're at this different plane where things they do don't really affect you, but you kind of take it as if you're the person getting haxed on. The tendency is to take their side all the time because they're kind of losing because of hacks, when they shouldn't be, according to our definition of hacks, at least Steven's definition of hacks. So usually you take the side of the person who is getting haxed on, which may not be like the best thing to do, since the guy who's trying to hack them out is definitely trying to win, the same as the guy who's getting haxed. So people tend to take sides when hacks starts occurring, and it can get a little nasty if you're just watching. But for the people playing, they're definitely playing to the best of their ability, to their win cons, and stuff like that. And so they have to make those moves in order to, get the win.
So, I'm sure we've all played in some big matches in the past over the years we've been playing VGC. So, both as players and spectators, are there any big matches you guys can recall that, had a lot of luck involved in them? Do you guys have any highlights?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and start this one. So this tournament is 2014 Worlds. So this is my first Worlds appearance, and it's round 2, and I'm down 0-1 in sets, and I'm playing Aaron, Cybertron Zing, and I know he has a lot of history with Hax and RNG. So sorry about that, but I'm gonna pick on him a little more. And we're in game 3.
Oh, please go ahead.
We're in game 3, and it basically comes down to I have my Chandelure, and he has a Ferrothorn, as well as I think it's a Garchomp. No, I don't think he had a Garchomp on that. It was something else, but it was something that threatened the Chandelure. I think it was actually Rotom Heat. So he has a Rotom Heat and a Ferrothorn, and I have my 1 HP Chandelure and my Garchomp, and he has to go for a double protect with his Rotom in order to secure the knockout on Garchomp with his Ferrothorn, and also has to hope for a miss from Heat Wave. And I actually didn't attack with my Chandelure that turn because I thought that his Rotom was going to attack, and in order to secure that I actually knocked it out, and before it attacked me, I protected my Chandelure. And he got the double protect, and then knocked out my Garchomp, and that was bad because my Chandelure was being outsped by his Rotom. So the only way I could win that is to pull a double protect of my own, and then I didn't. So I ended up losing that match. It was a very close game 3, and it was it still sticks in my head to this day, so you can kind of tell how important I felt that match was. But I mean, no hard feelings. Aaron definitely played to his outs there, and ended up going 4-2, I think, in that tournament. So
I think that a match that I witnessed as a spectator and not a player, one of the biggest ones for me, it was recent. It was in the 2016 season, and it was Chris Danzo versus Ashton Cox in the top 8 of a regional. I can't remember exactly what regional, but
I think it was.
I remember
Boston. Is that where it was?
That sounds familiar, because that's an area that both those players would attend an event. But anyway, I remember Chris Danzo was leading the match, and he was looking like he was going to take it in game 3. And I believe he had Trick Room up, and Ashton pulled off a double protect, but that wasn't even enough to win the match yet. And so Ashton went for a triple protect, and he managed to get it. And the odds of that, I believe, are 1 in 27 to get the double protect and then the triple protect. Something like that. And then after that, he managed to get 3 critical hits that I believe were all necessary to bring back the game. And he ended up defeating Chris Danzo in the cut in one of the craziest matches that you've ever seen. But like we mentioned earlier, Ashton was really just playing to his outs. He was playing to, he didn't have much of a chance. His tournament life was on the line. And so, he saw what plays he needed to make and what needed to happen for him to win. And he just kept playing. He didn't give up and made all the right moves, just kind of hoping that the luck would work out. And it did. And he managed to move on to the top 4 in that tournament.
Yeah, I recall that match too. And it was actually really kind of a big sight to behold. I don't think I've ever witnessed anyone get that much Hax in like the span of 5 turns, 3 to 5 turns. But yeah, he was able to get it, and I think we tried to some people tried to calculate what the exact chance of all the events occurring in his little string were, and they were ridiculously low. So
yeah, it's Pokemon. It happens. Yeah, another recent event we had was U.S. Nationals just this past summer in 2016. Do you guys remember day 2, Justin Kribba versus Conan Thompson?
Yes, yeah. I definitely remember that match, yeah. So Justin's a pretty good friend of mine. We've roomed together for some events, been to some events together. And yeah, he was not very happy after that match. So I definitely knew to go back and watch that VOD when Nationals was over. And lo and behold, he did in fact not exaggerate any of his stories. So I got to see everything. And I was like, this is disgusting. Come on, man. That's like the worst that could happen, basically. It's the worst feeling in the world when you're up so high and then the opponent pulls everything they need in order to win, and then you lose the set.
Sometimes Pokemon just doesn't want you to win the game, and you just gotta come to terms with that.
Kind of giving the opponent some plot armor so that you can't win.
Yes, exactly. So I think another thing we could probably discuss here while on this issue of, just talking about other players is when these players get lucky, I feel like there's this tendency to always, associate this luck with, oh, that player got so lucky and we don't like them because of that. Whereas it's not, the player was trying to play to their outs, like we'd mentioned earlier, and it's really the game you should be blaming and not some of these players. You know where I'm getting at?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I feel like I'm on the receiving end of this a lot. So as most people will know, I use confusion moves a lot, and I also used sheer cold lapras at some point. And every time I successfully got those off, people would not be very happy with my play, even though it was like the optimal play in that scenario. So in this case, it's more like I kind of know that they're not really attacking me. They kind of make it sound like they are, but they're definitely not. You can kind of feel it when you're reading their comments or anything like that. You know that they're more attacking the game rather than attacking the player, but they just don't understand which one, like what's the difference between attacking the game or the player playing the game. So I'd say if you're receiving some bad feedback because you're using hacks to your advantage or playing to your odds, I would say kind of just give them the benefit of the doubt. They were probably referring to the game mechanics themselves. And if not, if they legitimately hate you, then I guess just don't communicate with that person.
Yeah, it kind of goes back to luck management and where, if you don't want that kind of situation to happen to you, you should try to avoid getting into that situation if at all possible. And sometimes, we use moves like Confuse Ray or Swagger or Sheer Cold just to give us that chance to bring back a game. And so, you gotta respect that, like in Jon's case for his Lapras, he was giving up a move slot that he could have been using another move for Sheer Cold because he wanted to have that chance to bring a match back. He wanted to be able to win unwinnable games, which aren't technically unwinnable. They just have a slim chance of being won. In the case of Sheer Cold, like a 30% chance. And while it might not seem like the best chance, Jon will win 3 out of 10 games that he needs that move to hit. And so if he manages to steal away 3 games throughout a tournament, I don't mean to be using steal as an offensive way, but if you manage to bring back games, then it's totally worth it, because at the end of the day, it's about who wins the match, and not, who played more honorably or fairly or got less hacks or something like that. It's about the winner at the end of the match.
Yeah, just knowing some of Jon's history, you enjoy playing some of these games, with these additional factors involved, such as Confuse Ray. Is that right?
Yeah, I guess that's right. I might not do it next season according to those confusion tests, but definitely when you have the power of a coin flip at your fingertips, basically, it's kind of like implementing the coin flip early. And when you do that early and you win the coin flip, you can really kind of run away with the game if you can make the greatest use of that turn. A lot of people won't use Swagger or your confusion move until the very last moment when you need to do it in order to try and succeed the win. But if you try to if you can find an opening to place it in the early game, and then you can benefit off that, it'll make your end game a whole lot easier. And so those kind of strategies I used a lot back when I was playing in 2014, 2015, because those were pretty offensive formats. And in this format too, I would also, but primals are kind of limiting in the fact that, well, I guess not just primals, but the metagame in general, because Smeargle is such a problem. So a lot of people run things like Taunt and Safeguard to, stop the Dark Void or stop whatever Smeargle's trying to do. And so Confusion becomes a little less reliable because it's not as good as Dark Void. It won't be. So
you get a lot less opportunities to pull off those moves in this kind of format, especially with, like you said, there are a lot of other factors trying to prevent you from doing them. But in this format, it seems like since matches kind of go faster, every turn and every move is a little bit more critical. And so you have to make the right play every single time in order to come out on top in the end. And so then you can't really, there aren't as many free turns to say well, I'm going to use Confuse Ray on my opponent here to kind of win luck in my favor if they have, either methods to stop them or, maybe Confuse Ray is only stopping one of their Pokemon, but you need something to stop both. And so maybe another Pokemon could have done the job better than trying to just waste a turn using Confuse Ray. Another thing I wanted to mention was, like Jon said, using these kind of coin flip moves earlier in the game gives you a better chance to maybe come out on top in the end game. Every turn you have 2 moves, and with the implementation of like confusion and paralysis, you can kind of take away one of your opponent's moves, which is huge. You're cutting off half of their strategy, half of their battle plan, and it can really give you an advantage because sometimes in a game, just that one paralysis or confusion can sway the entire match into your favor, and suddenly your opponent can't come back anymore. And if they don't have any of those factors of their own, then you've just stolen a match and won it.
Yep. Are you guys familiar with 2013 Worlds?
I was not around then, so I am personally not familiar.
So, do we all know Aaron Zhang's love-hate relationship with Rotom?
Yeah,
Rotom Wash specifically?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I definitely know that story, despite not watching any of 2013 Worlds.
Oh, really? So it was the top 4 match. It was him against Ryosuke Kosuke, and I think his Rotom went 1 for 6 on Will-O-Wisp's attempts. So it missed 5 of them out of the 6 it tried. So that was really bad, even though Will-O-Wisp's accuracy was 75 back then. It was still really bad. One of the highlight, luck-involved matches that I can recall, in a major tournament like that. And he also had a Swagger go against him.
I was about to mention, I feel like Swagger was somewhere in that equation too.
Swagger and some paralysis too.
Yeah, his Lander, or I think it was his Landorus Therian that got swaggered, and if the Landorus got the attack off, he would have won, but it didn't. It hurt itself, and that was the end for Aaron in that game 3. So yeah, that's probably one of a major highlight I can think of in terms of luck and being showcased on stream like that. I guess another personal example that I could share here is that against Randy Quah, this is also 2013 Worlds. This is the last round of Swiss. We're both 3-2. And in the very last turn of game 3, I've come down to, he has an Excadrill that's boosted with Swords Dance, and he has to go for a Rock Slide because I have a Tyranitar and Thundurus out. And as long as both his Rock Slides hit, he wins. And seeing his opponent's resistance later on, he would have made top cut. But one of his Rock Slides missed my Pokemon, and then I was able to knock Excadrill out. So that was probably the luckiest I got in a huge match like that. And, it was unfortunate for Randy. I was ready to accept that loss because he played better than me during that match, and I got a Rock Slide miss, and it's just poor Randy couldn't get the top cut just because of that accuracy.
Yeah. Seems like we're kind of turning into let's think of all the times we got hacks for us. And your example of Rock Slide missing brings up a recent example. So in the very one of the first VGC's 2016 tournaments, this is in New York. I played Aaron in the finals. Again, Aaron. I mean, he really has a lot of hack stories to tell, but maybe that's because he's super popular. So I have a Ho-Oh, and he has a Landorus and a burned Kangaskhan. So I'm not really scared of the Kangaskhan right now, but the Landorus is definitely faster and definitely packs Rock Slide. So I'm a little bit not ready for that. I also don't have Rayquaza out yet, so I don't think I even brought Rayquaza to that game at all, which was a bad move on my part. So I really should have not won that game at all. But anyway, he Rock Slides and he misses the Ho-Oh, and then I was able to get a Sacred Fire burn onto him in that same turn. And Ho-Oh remained relatively healthy because of the burn Kangaskhan not being able to do enough damage. And I pretty much went on to take full advantage of that one burn, one miss, and took the game with just Ho-Oh.
I actually think I remember watching that because that video was put up online, earlier in the year. So I think I watched that match at some point.
And I think another one of my favorite hack stories is, I believe it was Aaron Trailer posted a video to YouTube, and it was on his Twitter, and it was his Groudon versus a full health Giratina and a full health Kyogre.
Yes, I remember this too.
You remember the video?
Yeah, I do remember this.
And he didn't have any other way to win, but his Groudon did have Rock Slide, and so his Groudon went for Rock Slide 5 turns in a row. And I think it pulled something 7 out of 10 or something like that number of flinches from the Rock Slides. And I don't think it might have missed one. I don't even know if it missed any. But and then he went on to win the match after what seemed like a hopeless situation just because of the lovely move Rock Slide.
Mm-hmm. And to think that move hasn't been changed for over 5 generations now.
Just bonkers.
Yeah, we'll probably see a comeback of Rock Slide. It wasn't as popular in this format, but we'll probably see a comeback of it for the next season.
Yeah, certainly more than likely. It just wasn't as needed this season, I don't think. There were better options for a lot of the popular Pokemon.
Yeah, that, and you factor in Rock Slide's very, I guess, comparatively weak base power. It's not particularly strong, especially if you don't have the same type attack bonus. And it's getting damage. It's getting its damage split even further because it's hitting both Pokemon. So it really isn't doing a whole lot, at least in this format, where everything is also bulky and strong at the same time.
And I think another interesting Rock Slide story was my friend Mario Serrano, who was bringing a Japan Sand archetype in the 2015 format, which was Tyranitar, Excadrill, Salamence, and then some other Pokemon. But I remember in the line for registration, as Mario usually does, he's usually building his team in line, but he chose to put Rock Slide on his Salamence, which is kind of an obscure and strange choice. And he had Rock Slide on Tyranitar already, and as well as Excadrill. But he decided to put Rock Slide on his Salamence, and he said that he did kind of flinch his way all the way up into the top cut. I believe it was best of one Swiss there, but it was quite the funny story to hear how he, ran this really obscure choice just to kind of give him a little bit of an advantage.
Yeah, and that kind of reasoning can actually get you places. And I remember in the first PC of this new format, which is still under VGC 2016, I had it was the Ray Eveltal core duo, and I didn't know what to put in the last slot, and I was very much toying with Cresselia, Trick Room user, water type, and eventually I decided to say, well, screw this, I'm just gonna put Aerodactyl here instead and flinch my way to victory. And you know what? It was actually the MVP of the team. So really, sometimes the weird choices you make that you think just help you get the edge and luck can actually help you win tournaments. So definitely don't shut out all those weird, wacky options just because they're not used very often.
Yeah, they may just get you somewhere. So let's flip the script here and think about when you're getting hexed against you, you're taking critical hits, you're getting flinched, full paralysis, you're hitting yourself in all those confusions. What do you guys do in terms of reactions to that kind of thing? How do you move on from them, say, in the rest of a best of 3 or in the rest of a tournament if you just lost, that match?
Well, what I would normally do in that kind of situation is kind of reflect on my performance in the match. There are times where the luck didn't end up swaying a match, and let's say the opponent got like a critical hit that on a Pokemon and just kind of ended the game sooner, and it wouldn't have kind of impacted it at all. But if there are situations where luck steals a game from you, and you would have won if it weren't for a lucky chance that your opponent had managed to get, you shouldn't really worry about that. It's just like the game we play, and you got to look at your own performance. I made all the right moves. Or like, if you really could have avoided that, then look at that. Just think about that for the future. Like, I don't want to get put in a situation where, if my opponent does, get a critical hit here or something like that, then I could lose the game. Or if they manage to hit a shaky accuracy move, you could lose the game. Try to avoid getting in those situations at all. And if it wasn't possible, just know that, typically you're going to win that game. And like 9 times out of 10, maybe, that game is yours to have. And so you really don't need to, reflect badly upon yourself or reflect badly upon your opponent. It's just Pokemon, and you gotta just like keep your head up, keep moving forward, and focus on the rest of the set or the tournament.
Yeah, and I have a great example of this. So this is at Madison Regionals, and I'm somewhere in the higher rounds, and I'm X1, I believe, and my opponent is Jake Moeller. I hope I pronounced his last name right. But I basically used Klefki to swagger my way to victory, and he was very much not happy with the way that set turned out. But instead of kind of like attacking me or expressing his like unhappiness, I guess, he kind of just signed the slip and ejected himself out of the room. And that's kind of a really good way to, one, contain your own feelings to yourself, and kind of not involve anyone else but yourself. And I really respect Jake for it, because after that tournament, he definitely bubbled in top 16 because of me, because I lost my last round. So I feel pretty bad. But yeah, we were the next day at the PC, we pretty much made up. Was like, yeah, don't worry about it. That's kind of what Swagger does. And yeah, great attitude to have towards like hacks in a specific round, in a specific set, and what to do if you lose to it. So I personally, if I lose to hacks, I kind of look back at what did I do wrong, what could I have done better, and if I couldn't have done anything, then, well, it's okay.
Exactly. And thinking about this when you're in the middle of a game situation where, oh crap, I just got hit by a critical hit and now my whole game plan's changed. That's not the time to be, flipping chairs over in the room and, throwing your arms up and then throwing stuff all over the place. You need to be thinking for that turn is, oh shoot, what do I have to do now to win this game? Is there still a way out? That's the type of reaction you need to have. And, keep your composure. I know a lot of people need to work on that, and just move on with the game and the match and the tournament, whatever stage this happened to you. So ultimately, I think that once I get a bunch of luck against me, I usually end up just to a point at laughing because I find it hilarious at that point. Regardless of what kind of tournament it is and what's been happening the rest of the day. It's just funny that sometimes the game can be so cruel.
It's like adding insult to injury, but the injury was already deep, so you have nothing else to do but laugh.
Exactly. And to close off with that, this is a phrase, I can't remember who said this first, but it's basically, don't blame the player, blame the game.
Absolutely.
So before we get on to, I guess we have one final overarching question, which I don't want to ask yet. Why don't we just talk about, really briefly, Philadelphia Regionals, which is coming up this weekend. And, John, I believe you're heading to that one?
I am going to that one. I was able to find a relatively cheap place to stay, and the drive isn't too terrible. I was actually approached by one of my other friends, who is another indie player, very up-and-coming. I won't tell his name, but maybe he'll do something big. But he offered to go to Philadelphia Regionals if I found enough people to go with us, and we did in fact do that, and Justin is also going, so more to that party, and it will be my last tournament in the 2016 format. I will not be going to Fort Wayne.
I imagine you're feeling pretty decent going into this tournament, because I believe you did win your Premier Challenge yesterday?
Yes, I did, and it was the second tournament I played in this season, so that's pretty nice to have, but then again, Indiana PCs are not particularly known for a large attendance, so we really don't know if those two results really mean anything about whether this team will do well at Philadelphia or not. I'm hoping it will. I've been working on this team for quite a while now with my team building partner, who is also going. So hopefully you guys will see that team there.
I do hope that there's a stream. Or no, I think we've already been confirmed that there isn't a stream.
There's no stream. Which is a little.
Well, then you'll have to make sure to keep Twitter updated on how you're doing and how things are going, because I'm sure a lot of people sitting at home are going to be wondering how this tournament is going.
Yeah, everyone's going to have to feed us updates, but do you have any predictions on people you think will do well?
I don't really know a whole lot about who all is going, but I would assume most of the East Coast crew would be going. I definitely know that some people from the West Coast are invading. I think Giovanni Costa is coming. It's going to be a good time, basically. But other than that, I don't really know a whole lot about who all is going to be taking the big win. I haven't seen a whole lot of, the pre-regionals jitters on Twitter yet. That we'll probably have to wait a few days for that to come out, but we'll see.
Yeah, I imagine that there just aren't that many jitters because, we're at the tail end of a format, and a lot of people are in that position where either, hey, I'll do well, and that's great. If not, we have 2017 to look forward to.
Mm-hmm, exactly.
So, I don't really care to talk too much metagame for 2016 anymore for this regional. So, just good luck to everyone going out there. We'll find out the results. We'll cover some more of that for next time or something. So, good luck to John and everyone else who you're traveling with, and just have fun out there.
All right, thank you very much.
And lastly, so this is a pretty big question in terms of our growth for VGC and Pokemon in general in the competitive scene. So, with all the luck involved in Pokemon, can this game be taken seriously as an esport?
I would say that it definitely can. We've seen the rise of certain games that have less luck aspects to them, like Hearthstone. That's like a big card game that's kind of becoming really popular, and I believe that it's kind of still growing, and it's definitely going to continue growing because it's popular enough, and people are going to find ways around the luck factors. And that brings me to my next point. While Pokemon does have a lot of luck involved in it, we still see consistent results at the top. Like if we just look at this year's Worlds, Wolf Glick is a player that a lot of people would expect to win the World Championships. He's a known player. He's had a lot of great results in the past couple of years, winning nationals, winning regionals, now just winning Worlds this year. And he's made it to Worlds finals before. And if we look even further into the past, we have players like Ray Rizzo, who, despite the game's luck factors, managed to win Worlds 3 times.
And that's one of the major arguments for whether you can or can't, whether luck does or doesn't affect tournament results. Personally, for me, I don't take the game too seriously. I kind of have the stance as if it starts becoming a drag, then you probably shouldn't be doing it if it doesn't make you happy. But yeah, so too serious plus luck factors for me doesn't really equal a good time. I like to have fun and kind of use the luck factors and play around with them. Even if I don't win and I get to use some move that maybe did something, then I'll be happy enough for that. I definitely think it's dependent on each individual whether they can or can't take Pokemon seriously. And I know a lot of people who are very serious about the game. We mentioned Wolfie, Ray. I'm sure they took the game very serious to an extent to be that successful, and that's definitely what you can definitely do that with this game. And with the changes that Game Freak is making to the core mechanics, like the paralysis nerf and the confusion nerf from the leaks, those are definitely a good step in the right direction.
Alex, are you aware of these at least?
Yes, I am definitely.
Okay, glad to hear it.
But the paralysis nerf shouldn't be a huge impact in terms of luck and factors and hacks, I believe. Didn't they only change it to reduce speed by 1/2 instead of 1/4?
Right, but that actually opens up quite a bit of counterplay to the paralysis status edition, because instead of quartering, which was a big deal because that's the equivalent of a -6 stat drop on speed, which is pretty big, but halving is only a -2. So you can mitigate that by setting up your Tailwind. It makes it less of a good check to Trick Room by paralyzing your own Pokemon. So it's got its draws.
We've seen as VGC has progressed from generation to generation that the people at Game Freak and people behind these move decisions and stuff like that have made small tweaks towards a more consistent metagame, and I think this is a really big step forward. Like you mentioned, nerfs to confusion and paralysis. It's going to be like you said, is confusion even worth using anymore? Not when it's no longer a 50-50 coin flip, when it's now in the favor of your opponent. Most of the time, it's not going to be something you want to try to bust you out of bad situations. And so it's kind of a good thing to see for consistency.
Now, it'll be interesting to see if they actually change the duration of confusion, because if they change the duration, it could still be worth it as an option. Confusion in Generation 6 and below, I think, has a 2, 3, or 4 turn span, and each of those is a 50-50 to hit yourself if you get that far. So if they change the length of confusion to be something like 3 to 6, then really nothing has changed a whole lot, because the average amount of hits you're still getting is the same as if it were 50-50 and 2 to 4. So it'll be interesting to see if they changed that or just kept it the same.
I think one of the biggest things I'm holding out for change to, and I don't know if this is something that we could have already discovered or not, but I do hope that they change the freeze status condition.
Why?
Because it's one of the... I feel like it's one of the ones that happens when your opponent is going for just kind of a regular move, and it can they're not even trying to bring back a lost game unless they are using a move like Ice Beam just to bring back a lost game. But the chances of getting frozen are so slim, and then once you're frozen, a lot of the times that Pokemon is just kind of done. Like it's retiring for the game, and it's just going to chill out for a while.
Alright, yeah. So freeze is a very despised status condition because of its really debilitating and unlimited like potential. I know there are a couple of games where some Pokemon got frozen and they stayed frozen for maybe 10 or more turns and really just didn't do anything. So it's definitely more debilitating than sleep or paralysis, but it's so rare that you kind of feel like it's not balanced in that sense because you're not even using Ice Beam for the most part to try and get that. However, I am of the camp that we should go back to Generation 1 mechanics on Freeze, and that is very much...
No.
That's very much... I'm very much on that side. Because then, you won't be giving the opponent false hope that they're just, okay, maybe I'll thaw out this turn. It's like pitying them because they may or may not thaw out. Who knows? But if you go back to Gen 1 mechanics, if you freeze them, they're gone. And then they're just like, well, I lose the game now. Which is, I guess that's worse than right now, but I'm of that camp where if we go back to Gen 1 freeze mechanics, it'll be better.
No, I just wanted to just faint my Pokemon then. I don't want to have to waste time with, trying to switch something in for that slot. I guess it eliminates the chance of unthawing through the use of like a fire move or something like that, but if freeze was permanent, I would probably just want my Pokemon fainted and just to move on from there.
Nah, but a neat quirk is that if you were frozen in Gen 1, you could use Haze to thaw yourself. So that would actually increase the usage of Haze, which is already seeing quite a bit of usage in this season because of Xerneas.
Now, does Haze still work that way?
I don't think it does. It only did that in Generation 1, I believe.
Does Haze thaw yourself or only thaw the opponent?
It might just thaw someone else.
All right.
Yeah, it's probably just a natural field effect. And I don't know if carrying Haze on its own just to worry about freezes is enough to use it, but for Xerneas, of course it is.
Well, hey, in the next season we're gonna have the Eevee boosting all of its stats. You want to haze that away right away.
Don't be revealing my tech now, Alex. Come on.
Yeah, well, I figured you'd be on the Eevee side.
Oh,
honestly,
yeah, I'm
I thought
definitely on Team Eevee.
You'd be the guy trying to abuse the Eevee strats and kind of make the best of it.
Don't worry, when I baton pass my plus what is it? Plus 10 Eevee? When I baton pass my plus 10 Eevee to like a Garchomp, it'll be good. It'll be good.
Yeah. If the Eevee manages to pull off a baton pass with all these insane boosts, you're gonna wish you had Haze.
Then again, we don't actually know which move Eevee takes to use in order to use the Eevee Mancy. I don't actually know what it's called. I just call it Eevee Mancy. But yeah, because Z moves do take moves in order to transform them into the Z move. So I'm not sure what Eevee needs to do that, but hopefully it's something like baton pass.
Maybe it's double team.
Ooh. Ooh.
Maybe it's helping hand. That'd actually be a good one.
That's true. Yeah, it does get helping hand.
So I'm just gonna quickly reel this back in because we kind of spiraled out of control from
no way
my initial question.
Dude, just like the hacks in some games.
I know it just happens. So I think I guess going back to this is probably a few minutes now, but Alex talked about how despite all the luck, we have so many consistent results from top players winning tournaments and the like. And that's just going to show you that this game is, I think, heavily skill-based and there's just some luck involved. So it happens. Think about it like poker, where a lot of their best players are still going to be their best players in these tournaments, and every once in a while, they are just going to get bounced out early because they got a bad draw or something like that.
I think another interesting thing worth discussing is would Pokemon still work if we remove the luck factors? Would it still be fun and competitive and stuff like that? And I think one of the greatest things that Pokemon offers is the risk versus reward factors in it, and that you get to kind of choose do you want to have a consistent strategy, but maybe not always pick up those one-shot knockouts, or do you want to use the more powerful moves and just risk missing? It kind of lets everyone have their own unique style, and kind of leaves things more into the player's hands. Whereas we would kind of move towards the direction of chess if we didn't have if we removed all luck factors. And I think it's kind of fun. It's kind of what makes Pokemon unique is having these luck factors.
Right, and I guess that's going to tie into what I was thinking just then, is that if you really wanted to make all the luck non-existent, it would be so boring to watch as a spectator. you wouldn't be having fun watching the game. You would be kind of just like, okay, he's gonna do this now. It's gonna hit. It's gonna paint. Great. It's really
No anticipation.
Not interesting. It's like an example I had was it's like in this format, it's watching the dual primal mirror or the big six mirror. Which one is more likely to be interesting to you? And I fall on the big six side because they typically bring their Smeargle, and that is a whole big problem. But the dual primal, those games go so slow typically, and there's so much more based around positioning and getting your hits in, and they're not so reliant on hacks, which is fine. That is a good way to play, but to me, it is not very interesting. So I definitely prefer watching a big six mirror versus a dual primal mirror.
But in the dual primal mirror, you're going to see those 85% accurate moves whiffing a lot. And
That
that's
is
always
true
fun.
too, and that is probably the most interesting aspect of dual primal mirror. Also, the sunders that happen; those are always good too.
Oh yes,
I gotta love sunder.
But you brought up in the big six mirror how Smeargle normally plays an important role, and I think I've mentioned this in previous episodes, but it's still something worth noting here: is how much kind of hype Smeargle builds in the crowd, especially when I was spectating at Worlds, and you see, like, the turn has ended, Smeargle is on the field, Moody, what's it gonna do? What is it gonna do? And you're just sitting there like, alright, and then evasiveness goes up, and everyone cheers out. It's like, it's so crazy, because, that's kind of what makes it different, is like, what, we don't know what's gonna happen, and so, the unpredictability makes Pokemon a little more interesting.
Yeah, what John said about spectating a match that would have no luck in, or if all the luck factors were removed, spectating a match wouldn't be very fun to watch at all. But I wanted to ask, if there was no luck in Pokemon, would you guys still be playing?
Definitely. I definitely run teams that, well, at least towards the end of this season, I have built teams that are, I would say, I guess the term would be resistant to hacks. So, my Worlds team, which had a Shedinja on it, I gave that team to Ashton because he wasn't going to be going to Worlds, and he just wanted to play with it a little bit. And he replaced the Shedinja, but I mean, when he ran the team other than Shedinja, he said he gave feedback to me, and one of the feedback was this team is very good at stopping the opponent's shenanigans. And I agree, because when I'm playing that team, the opponent's options are so limited that even if they do get a hacks in here or there, it's not very effective, I would say, versus this team. And so one of those teams, this team I'm bringing to Philly, is also kind of hacks resistant in a sense. But there's definitely ways to almost completely eliminate hacks from your opponent and just keep it on your side. And that's pretty much what my playstyle has been this whole time, really, is just keep the hacks on the opponent's side. You don't want it, so that way you can just keep smacking them until they lose.
Well, right. This comes back to just smart team building. Is how well can you manage your probabilities like that and just prevent hacks from happening to you? But Alex, what about you?
I would say that I would probably continue to play, but it would definitely change the face of the game, and I would have to kind of see how things play out after that point. But I mean, I love Pokemon. I got into this because I'm just a Pokemon fan. I wasn't like looking for some kind of competitive outlet. I wanted to hang out with people. I wanted to meet people with similar interests, and I would definitely find a way to still make it enjoyable, and I think it still could be definitely enjoyable without the luck factors, but it would totally change the face of the game.
Right, yeah. But if there are no luck, then you really could play with your favorites to win, right? Because they won't be affected by luck, right?
It depends on your favorites.
Well, your favorite can't be Landorus anymore if it doesn't get any more flinches.
Oh no.
Yeah, good. It's still gonna be good though.
Yeah. I mean, they still got to be good Pokemon, John. I'm sorry, but that's just the facts. I'm not going to be able to take tournaments with my Hustle Togepi that I hatched in my egg in Heart Gold Soul Silver.
Dang. But it has extra sensory, dude.
Yeah, but it doesn't have the Pentagon.
Oh, true, it doesn't. Yeah, I can't use that favorite.
That Togepi was my favorite.
Sorry. Guess you can't use your favorites.
Yeah, some people won't be able to next season because we're gonna have that locked region Pokedex. So some favorites will be gone for people, which is unfortunate.
All my favorites are still in, so all my favorites are all still in, so that's all good. There's a Lapras, there's a Sableye, I'm set.
Oh sure, yeah, good for you.
All my favorites are restricted. No.
Oh.
Yeah, it'd be pretty awkward for the people that do just enjoy the legendaries, but we typically see the crowd that it's kind of anti-legendaries. At least for like spectators all the time. You see like legends are OP and I don't want to see legends. I just want to use my favorites.
Yeah, it's definitely a very early fan kind of mentality, I think, because I was also the same way. Back when I was young and playing in Diamond and Pearl, I would never really think about using legendaries because I thought, well, they're just too good, so better listen to Smogon's like little rule set here and just use the stuff that's not like broken.
Yeah, you definitely see that from the more casual perspective. I remember one of my memories was a friend I had made through playing Pokemon, and I had like a Raikou on my Heart Gold Soul Silver team, and he's like, "You're using that? Like, why would you use a legendary like that? Like, they're OP." And I'm just like, "Oh, well, I liked it, so I used it. I guess that's bad."
I think it's definitely an approach that happened not because of Smogon, but because of these more organized play things happening. Back in like really old days, like Gen 1, Gen 2, people use legendaries all the time because they're cool, right? Who cares if they're bad or good? Just use them because they're legendaries. They're cool. You show them off to your friends.
Exactly.
I mean, why not? You had them, you could use them. They're fun to use. They're great. They're cool looking.
Tying it back to luck, though, big legendaries actually kind of mitigate luck too because they kind of just knock everything out before they can do anything.
Yeah, that is
That's
something
true.
that we failed to mention. I'll just briefly throw it in here, but speed control is actually a big part of luck, just because if you attack first, you're more likely to have luck go in your favor because your moves are reacting first. And the biggest one that you could look at is if you crit your opponent first, they're probably not going to be able to crit you back, considering their Pokemon might be fainted or something like that.
Yeah, that's the story of the whole season, and just VGC in general.
That's kind of how my top 4 set went versus Steven at one of the PCs recently. I just managed to get off a lot of attacks. Steven was doing a lot of switching, and so I just got a lot of critical hits off, and I managed to take that set from him very skillfully.
Yeah, I don't want to talk about it.
Sometimes going quantity over quality is the way to go.
This is true. But obviously we can always continue our discussion on luck in Pokemon. I'm sure we haven't mentioned everything we could have talked about, and maybe we will revisit this topic another time.
I just want to say that the games actually promote the use of these like haxy moves. They obviously want you to use them. So in like the Stadium series and I guess even Battle Revolution to an extent, these are games created by the people who make Pokemon. So Game Freak, I guess. Maybe they outsource it to some other company to do it, but typically they give them full reign of what they want to do. And some of the opponent sets are so filled with moves like Swagger and Double Team that you kind of wonder, were they really meant to just not see use in competitive play, or were they definitely meant to kind of stir up the community in order for you to use them? And it's the same in like the battle facilities. There are so many sets with Double Team, Bright Powder, Swagger that you kind of have to wonder, did Game Freak really just want this to be used?
Yeah, it's a unique approach, because it doesn't seem like the general public views that opinion the same way. Maybe just the company's on an entirely different side of the coin here.
Company just wants to watch us burn as we try to hax each other out with evasion, minimize, all this other stuff.
They want you to realize that, maximizing your factors in winning is your best chance.
Very true.
Maybe we just haven't realized it yet.
The real tech has yet to come. Double Team will be on every Pokemon.
There we go, and everyone just sets up double teams until +6, and then whoever manages to get the first critical hit wins.
Yep, exactly.
Yep, and with that, thank you to Jon for being on here. We really appreciate him being on our show.
I really appreciate you offering me to be here, so thanks.
Thank you. And I guess, lastly, you guys can find The Hypervoice on iTunes. Just search for The Hypervoice at Pokemon if you need to find it there. We have an email. You guys can send us feedback and questions to vgchypervoice@gmail.com. And lastly, we are all on Twitter. You can follow us all on our individual handles. Jon, where can people follow you?
My Twitter handle is @JHUFSELF. And you pronounce that JHUFself.
Excellent. I always forget the F in the middle there.
Yeah, a lot of people tend to do that, but that's okay. It's not important.
Excellent. And Alex, what about you?
You can follow me at LexiconVGC. And lastly, I'll pass it back to Steven. Steven, where can we follow you?
At Super Morioka. And thank you to our listeners out there. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being a part of our show. We hope to continue to entertain you guys. That's enough from us. We hope to see you guys next time for more of the Hyper Voice.
Hope you all had a happy Halloween.
May the dice rolls be in your favor.
Absolutely. Everyone's gonna need them at some point.